All right, welcome to what I'm calling part X of my Alpine course. And I'm saying part X because I want this to be the last part of my course. And I want to leave room in case I want to add something later on and, kind of keep this at the end. And part X sounds kind of cool, a bit hip, maybe. Probably not. But what I wanted to end with was a full demo. Now, this is still going to be pretty simple. It's not going to be too complex, um, but it kind of gives you an idea of something real that you could build with Alpine. So the application is going to make use of an API that I've used a couple times now already, and that is the This Day in History API. It's really handy. But this time, instead of just fetching the events for today, I'm actually going to let the user pick a day. And then I'm actually going to show either events, births, or deaths and have them pick what they want to see. So let's actually run this. And I'll pick July 4th, click Fetch Events. By the way, if you didn't see it, the button was not enabled until I picked the date. And then I see my things rendered here. And if I don't want to see death, I want to keep it happy, I can just click and that goes off. And I could turn off events and just keep it at births. And if I wanted to, I could turn everything off, but that wouldn't be very helpful. And just go in here and keep changing based on what I want. And if I change the date, let's go to July 2nd, I can hit fetch events again and I can get new information, new births, new deaths, etc. So not terribly complex, but a couple different fields going on here. Not sure if you saw it. It could have been quick, but when you click, let me try this again because it's real fast. It does flash. Content is loading. So there is a loading screen. It's just so darn fast that it's kind of easy to miss. So how do I build this? Let's look at the HTML first, all right? Because it's a bit more complex compared to what we've shown earlier. So on top, we have our input type equals date. You can see our button, which is going to fire off the event to get information for the selected date. Notice that I have bound the disabled property to the value of date such that when the page loads and this is blank, uh, they won't be able to click the button until they actually select the date. So essentially make them pick something, enable the button, and then when they click it, it will fire off my call to the API. The second part is just a set of checkboxes. Notice they all use the same X model, in this case, event types. And I am giving a value for each of these events, births, and deaths. I'm using a label as well to make it a bit easier to click. And that's it for the form. We then have a couple of templates. We have one for loading, and then we have three different templates for events, births, and deaths. And for each of them, we first see, do we have this data? And do we want to show that data? And that's going to be based on the check mark. Inside of here, it's almost the exact same. The only thing changing is events for or births for, but I just render the data. So you can see here, event and events, event and births, and event in deaths. So that's it for the front part. Let's make this bigger and look at the JavaScript. So first off, I do have an empty init. I probably should have erased that before I started recording, but it's okay. I'll leave it there. I talked about how we allow you to pick if you want to show events, births, or deaths. For that, I used Alpine's Gitter support. And what I'm doing is because all of these share one X model, it's going to be an array of strings. So I can basically say, hey, if the array includes this particular string value, then return true, otherwise return false. And it's basically the exact same code for all three. Now, fetch events is probably the most complex part. We start off by setting the loading value to true. That will pop up that one template to tell the user things are loading. Again, that was so fast, you may not have seen it. I reset my data to null. I get the value from my input type equals date. That's right up here on top. This is going to be YYY or year dash month dash date. So I do a quick split on it and grab the first and second value, or 0 first, second. Yeah, arrays start with 0. We all know that. But essentially, I'm ignoring year and just grabbing month and date. This will return them as strings, and I need to convert them to numbers because that really nice API to support getting the events for a day. All I have to do is add month and day to the end of the API that you have seen in my other videos. So call it get the data. I then splice the data out. Again, I'm getting the first 10 items. I didn't need to do that, but I thought it would make it look a little bit nicer. And I definitely store these values, even if I'm not showing it, because I want you to be able to turn on def and have it just show up. I don't want to do a network call again. And that's it. That's the main method. Everything else here is just plain data. I will point out this. When the application loads, I want the checkboxes to default to true. So I went ahead and set the initial value to the strings of each of those particular form fields. That way, when you hit the page, they're already checked. And that, I think by default, people will want to see all three, and they'll optionally turn things off. So that's the full application. Really, it's still not a lot, 40 lines. And again, I have an empty init method I could get rid of. HTML is not too big either, but I think it's indicative of the kind of things you would see with Alpine. I need some simple interactivity on my web page, and I want to do it a little bit easier, and Alpine is a great fit for that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I'll have a link to the code pin in the video comments, and enjoy.